Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
An ominous envelope or work-related letter from the boss? In today's first installment, we find out what was in that envelope. Enjoy the show! After 20 years together, she simply walked out of my life. She packed her things and left as if our 2 decades together meant nothing. What the hell? For 20 years, we lived and loved each other, and when times got tough, she packed her things and left. Somehow, I didn't really blame her. These were the people she interacted with. I tried to tell her, but she knew better. Well, the hard times passed, as they always do, and guess who showed up in my life again? Yes, she crawled back. Her clothes were all worn out. She had lost too much weight and looked terrible. Like an idiot, I felt sorry for her and took her back. God, what a fifth place I was. Or maybe, deep down, I still loved her. I took her to the hospital for an examination. She was immediately admitted to room 4. They put her in order and tried to put her back together as best they could. She still didn't look healthy, but her face, that beautiful face, was still there. When she saw me, she smiled that smile that melted my heart 20 years ago. The hospital discharged her after a week, and I took her home. Over the months, I helped her recover. I pushed her to eat healthily, quit smoking, and take care of herself. 6 months later, she was as beautiful as before. That's when we made love for the first time since her return. It was just as wonderful as in the early days of our relationship. I can't describe how beautiful she was, but I felt so lucky to have a wife like her. Until she left again. After she left, she was still as beautiful as before, but I don't think I loved her that much anymore. Only time will tell. I still loved her, but not as much as before she left. At least for now, she could win my heart again if she wanted to. A year after her return, it seemed like she was really trying to win my love back. Of course, I never let her forget that she had left me. When we fought and argued, she hated that I kept bringing it up, and I think that's why I did it. This quickly stopped all disputes. About 18 months after her return, she was back to her normal weight and in good spirits again. She was happy, and all our little fights stopped. She simply agreed with everything I wanted. Our nightlife was back to normal, well, as normal as a 40-year-old can be. Then, on a Friday afternoon in my office, I received an envelope from the courier service. I opened it, and a micro SD card spilled out onto my desk. A 32 gigabytes card, no note, no nothing, only a map. I shook my head, took the adapter, and plugged it into the USB port. File Explorer opened, and on the tiny card, there was one huge MP4 file of 18 gigabytes and about 100 JPEG files. The file names gave no clue as to what they might contain or where they came from. I clicked on the first JPEG file, named 10001.jpg. What appeared on the screen took my breath away. She looked great. I closed the file and clicked on the next one. I almost fell out of my chair. There was Judy, my wife. Jealousy, anger, and betrayal hit me in the stomach. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. I shook my head and closed the photo. I clicked on a photo in the middle of the list. It showed Judy having a night with a black guy. She seemed to enjoy what was being done to her. I closed the photo and clicked on the video. It took a long time to load. There was a bed in the center of the frame, the light was dim and then slowly became brighter until all the shadows disappeared. She started talking. I turned up the volume on the speakers. She spoke incoherently, making no sense. I looked at her eyes. She was under the influence of pills. I had warned her about this. I knew the people she was hanging out with when she left were using that stuff. After about 5 minutes of her rambling, 3 without anything black guys crawled onto the bed. She was glad to see them. My throat tightened with anger, betrayal, and jealousy. Love seemed to be dying somewhere. I touched my face, it was wet with tears. I closed the video and took the SD card out of the machine. I was going to throw it in the trash, but instead, I put it back in the envelope and placed it in a locked desk drawer. Then I sat back and cried. After half an hour, I stopped and just sat there, thinking. I pulled out the SD card again and inserted it into the computer. I opened the list of files. Looking at the creation date, I saw it was about a month after she left. Okay, that explains a few things, not what she did, but who she was with. But why did they send it to me? There was no return address on the envelope and no sender information on the courier receipt. I was stumped. I didn't know any of the men in the photographs or in the film. I selected a few photos and printed them out, then put them in my briefcase. I placed the SD card back in the drawer and locked it. I took my briefcase and told my boss I was going home because I wasn't feeling well. On the way home, I called Judy and told her I was on my way. She sounded happy to hear that I was coming back early, though I didn't know how long that would last. When I got home, I walked in the front door and found her standing there without clothes. "What is this?" I asked. "I thought I would greet you like this from now on." "Don't you like it?" she asked. "Yes, I think I like it," I replied. I took the drink from her hand, walked around her, and went into the living room. "What the hell?" she said, following me. I put my briefcase down, took a sip of bourbon and ice, walked around her again, and went upstairs to change. I looked at her, frowned, took another sip of bourbon, and put the glass on the dresser. I pulled a t-shirt and shorts out of my drawer, put them on, grabbed my drink, and walked back into the living room. "What?" she screamed. I heard her feet stomping down the stairs as I sat down in my chair. Having finished drinking, I turned to face her. I grabbed her hand, slammed the empty glass into her hand, and turned back to face my desk. She poured ice on my head, threw the glass on the table, and walked out in a huff. I knew I'd pay for it later, but I was still furious with what I saw on the SD card. Tonight, she might just go to hell. I wasn't going to let her leave the house. I started surfing the net on my computer. About an hour later, she came downstairs, dressed smartly. She stood behind me, tapping her right foot. "Where are the car keys?" she asked softly. I ignored her. "Where are the car keys?" she asked louder. "In my briefcase," I said. She snorted, picked up the case, walked to the other side of the table, set it down, and opened it. There were the photographs I had printed. I heard her sigh. She took a step back as if she had been hit in the chest. Then, she fell to her knees. "I wonder who it is," she said. "Today at work, I received a package from a courier. Inside was an SD card with these and a bunch of other photos. It also had about 3 hours of video of you. Do you know anything about this?" "Damn," she whispered, covering her mouth with her hands. "Who, dear? Who sent me this? I'd like to thank him for warning me about your infidelity. It looks like you loved every moment of it. Look at your smile in this photo." I shouted, the last sentence coming out in a roar. "Oh," she whispered again, covering her face with her hands. I turned to her in my chair and lifted her chin to look into her eyes. They were full of tears, but I didn't care. I wanted to see her face. "So tell me all about it," I ordered her. She took a deep breath, then opened her mouth and screamed. She fell to the floor, covering her face and head. I just watched her. I threw another photo in front of her. He grabbed her by the hair and pulled her head up until it was in front of her face. She screamed again as she looked at the photo. "Please, that's enough. No more. I have 10 more photos that I want to show you. I especially like this one where you're with 2 men at once. Look!" I shouted, pulling her head towards the photograph again. She just sobbed while I held her head. "No more, please," she begged. "Then tell me all about it," I shouted. "I can't." "Of course you can. Did all this happen before you got sick, or was it all the pills you were taking?" In most of the photos I'd seen so far, she looked so stoned that she probably wouldn't remember her name when she came to. I'll try, but I don't remember much," she said. I waved my hand in front of her face to silence her. I collected the photos on the floor and grabbed her hair again. "A good start," I said. Still holding her by the hair, I stood up and began to drag her. She screamed, then stood up and followed me upstairs to the bedroom. The photographs were in my hand. I threw them on the bed. I grabbed her dress, this was the one I had just bought for her, and tore it. She screamed in pain as the fabric cut into her skin. At that moment, I didn't care. She wasn't even wearing panties. I tore off her bra, only stockings and a belt remained. "Creature!" I shouted at her. "No, I'm not like that," she shouted back. "You're dressed like one of them, and I have the pictures to prove it." I shouted back. She fell to her knees again and began to sob. I pulled her to her feet. She resisted. I hit her in the face, not hard, but it hurt. "Stop it," she screamed. I hit her again. She looked at me with hatred in her eyes. Now maybe I'll get something from her, I thought. I roughly pulled her to her feet. While she was standing, I pushed her and she fell on the bed. In the photo where she was brutally, she just lay there crying. "Why the hell are you crying?" I shouted. She didn't answer. She covered her head with her hands. I just stood there, looking at her. I made a decision. I undressed. She didn't move. I approached her roughly and brought her a wet rag, which I threw on her face. "Clean yourself up," I told her. "Don't call me that." I had never called her those words before. This was the first time. "I'm so sorry. I love you so much." "Of course, you do. So much that you went off and started having an intim with 2 or 3 men at a time. What the hell were you thinking?" She just kept crying and cleaning herself up. She got up and went to the bathroom. After a while, I heard the shower turn on. I went in and joined her. I also needed a shower after what happened with a woman like her. She took the soap and started washing me. It felt nice. I stood under the running water and washed off the soap. I took the soap from her and started washing her. I wasn't gentle. She stood there, accepting everything I did. I handled her breasts roughly. I took a towel and wiped her off roughly, too. I handed her the towel, and she dried me off gently. She tried to kiss me, but I turned my head away. She kissed me on the cheek instead. I pulled away and went to bed. I crawled under the covers and turned off my nightlight. Judy climbed in and pulled the blanket over her side, turning off her nightlight. Only the overhead light remained. "Well, creature, turn off the damn light," I said. She threw off the blanket, stood up, and turned off the light. She returned to bed and pulled the blanket over herself. I heard her cry quietly. "Good night," she said. "I love you." "Good night," I replied. "No, you do not love me." I felt her flinch when I said that. Somewhere in the middle of the night, she crawled up to me and hugged me. I didn't push her away, but I didn't answer her either. I think she cried all night. When I woke up the next morning, she was fast asleep, her arm thrown across my body. I smiled, looking at her calm, beautiful face. My anger slowly boiled over. My hatred was almost gone. I still didn't know what to do. It was Saturday morning. I wasn't going to work. I had no idea what to do with her. When I thought about what she did, I felt bad, not bad enough to throw up, but almost. I carefully slipped out from under her arm and went to make coffee. I was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper, wondering what to do when she came downstairs. She was still without anything. I put on shorts and a t-shirt. She poured herself a cup of coffee and sat down opposite me. She took the part of the newspaper that I had already read and began to read. We didn't talk for a long time. "What should I do with you?" I asked her. "I don't know." "Can you find it in your heart to forgive me?" she asked. "I don't know." "Why did you do what you did? Why did you leave? Why did you take the pills? Why did you have night with all these men? Maybe when you answer these questions, I can start to forgive you." I got up and went to the living room. I sat down in front of my computer with my head in my hands. My briefcase was still open. There was only one last intimate photograph left in it. I groaned. Then I heard her come in and stand behind me. She put her hands on my shoulders, and her body shook. She must have seen that last photo. "Oh God, no," she whispered. Her hands shook on my shoulders. "Do you want to tell me about it?" I asked softly. I can't. I mean, I don't remember. I see a photo like this, and my brain shows me what I did before and after, but not why. I don't know why I did what I did. You know, I talked to the lady you told me about. You said I shouldn't communicate with her, but I didn't listen. I didn't listen to anyone. I'm so sorry for what I did to you. I'm so sorry for what I did, she said, pointing to the photo in my briefcase. I was so stoned the whole time that I couldn't think clearly. The lady continued to give me pills. I lived on coffee, cigarettes, and substances. When they stopped giving me these, I woke up and saw myself in a puddle on some street. I looked terrible. That's when I went looking for you. I met PJ. He drove me home to your house. I told him to leave. He was going to walk me to the door, but I said I could handle it. I've always been stubborn. I rang the doorbell and knocked on the door. You didn't answer. I started crying. I must have fainted. I remember waking up from the noise. I opened my eyes and there you were. I was delighted, but I couldn't move or speak. You took me to the hospital. When you did this, I realized that you still love me. I love you so much for taking care of me. I promise I will never, ever leave you again. I looked at her. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. I shook my head and rubbed my face with my hands. Judy, you have to try to remember why you left. Otherwise, we'll never be able to get over this. I can't forgive you for what you did with those men, but I can try not to think about it, knowing that you were under the influence of the pills they gave you. But I need to know why you left. Was it because of something I did? Was it because of someone else that I ignored? What? Why did you leave me? I almost cried. Tears welled up in my eyes. I looked at Judy, and she was crying too. I can't remember. Honestly, I don't know if it was because of you or someone else. I was on pills even then. There were times when I didn't remember where I lived. The lady took me home, brought me to the door, then she left. I knew how to open the door and go to bed. You were there when I went to bed. I was so tired that I just went to bed without saying a word, she said. I remember those nights. I was waiting for you to say goodnight, but you didn't. I was so sad that I just sat in front of my computer, surfing the net. I ignored you, just like you ignored me. I knew you were using, but you were an adult, and I left you alone. I should have confronted you, that's what I should have done. But in my condition, it would only have made me angrier. I remember that you were angry, but I needed a new thrill, so I went looking for the lady. She gave me everything she had so I could get high and feel good. Oh God, I'm so sorry, she said, kneeling and looking up at me, tears streaming down her face. I started to reach out my hand to comfort her, but my eyes fell again on the photo in my briefcase. I pulled my hand away, closed my eyes, and shook my head. I sat with my elbows on the table, my head in my hands, my eyes closed, sobbing. I heard Judy move. She came closer and placed her head on my lap, kneeling. I looked down at her face. God, she was so beautiful, even when she cried. I had a headache. I looked at my watch, it wasn't even 10 in the morning. I wanted to drink, but it was too early to start. Will you satisfy me? I said. Judy looked at me. She didn't smile or frown, she just nodded. She reached up to pull my shorts off. I heard her small sobs as she rose to her feet and went to the bathroom to clean herself. I sat down again, closed my briefcase, and sat there with my head in my hands, wondering what I should do. I really needed to know why she left. The rest happened in a pill-fueled haze, although she took the pills voluntarily. I thought I could forgive her. I would never forget, but I think I could find the strength to forgive her. Would I be able to trust her? Not soon. I heard her return. When I looked up, she was kneeling next to me. I shook my head. She frowned. Get up and sit in the chair, I told her. She smiled slightly as she rose to her feet, pulled up another office chair, and sat quietly watching me. I put my head in my hands again, and my headache started up once more. Do you want to put on your shorts? She asked quietly. No, thank you, I replied softly. She was still without clothes. I just sat there, thinking and listening to her breathing. "Dawn?" she asked quietly. "Yes," I replied. "Are you going to divorce me?" Her voice trembled. "I don't know yet. I have a headache. I'll go upstairs and lie down. Clean the house and then wake me up." "Of course, darling. I love you," she said, her voice full of sorrow. As I left the office and went upstairs, I heard her last sob before I closed the bedroom door and lay down, closing my eyes. Lying there, I saw all the photographs and the parts of the video that I managed to watch. I couldn't get them out of my head. I tried and tried to think of something else, but to no avail. I saw her beautiful face smiling at the camera every time I tried to understand how she could do this to me. Of course, in my imagination, she was in a frenzy of euphoria. She probably didn't know what was going on. Eventually, I fell asleep. Judy hit me in the heart again. Of course, I deserved every blow. What the hell was I thinking? Why did I let my guard down so easily? Why did I listen to this lying, two-faced person who called herself my friend? I sat there crying for half an hour. My head hurt badly, but my heart hurt even more. I loved him so much that I couldn't do enough for him, even before I left. But I couldn't remember why I left. I racked my brains, but couldn't think of a single reason why I would leave. I just remembered that I was always high, and nothing else mattered except staying that way. Yes, we had difficult times, but that was not a reason to leave him. We'd been in worse situations and gotten through them together. We loved each other, but apparently, I ruined it all. Every time he said anything other than "I love you," it cut me to the bone. My heart hurt so much that I could hardly breathe. And no, it wasn't a heart attack, it was mental suffering from the loss of his love for me. I caused this loss myself. I could only imagine how his heart felt when he found out about my betrayal. I was surprised that he didn't kick me out, leaving me with only my clothes on and a $10 bill in my pocket. I knew he had withdrawn money from our joint account. I remember how angry I was with him then, but this anger disappeared with the next injection or whatever I took. I sat for a little longer, then got up and started cleaning the house. It helped me not to think about anything. I didn't want to think about anything right now. My husband of 20 years was very, very angry with me. I was cleaning a house that really wasn't that dirty. Dawn was always a good housekeeper. When I didn't feel well enough to clean, it wasn't that common, but most husbands would just leave everything and let the wife do all the work later when she felt better. I was so grateful when I found Dawn. I went through a terrible divorce and felt awful. Then a neighbor introduced me to Dawn. I fell in love with him in the first month. I didn't know how he felt until the next month when this wonderful man got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. I cried so hard that I couldn't answer him for an hour. Tears rolled down my cheeks. I hugged him tightly for a long time. When I finished cleaning, I sat down in the living room and started crying again. I could see my life with him coming to an end in a few months or even weeks, and nothing could be done if I didn't remember why I left. We were living in a nice house when the problems started. Don lost his job because of the economy. I was still working, at least for a while. When Don couldn't find another job right away, we exhausted our savings and lost our house. We sold it and made about $100. The market was so soft that we held a fire sale to avoid losing our credit. We moved into a long-term hotel in a very bad part of the city. Don tried to tell me that everyone I met would only care about themselves, no matter what they said. Then I met a lady. She was a part-time easy girl, a part-time dealer, and a part-time con artist. This is what Don said about her when he met her. Don was good at recognizing people quickly. I think he learned this when he was a police officer. This was another sad period in my life, not all the time, but only during those moments when he was sent abroad and I couldn't go with him. I worked at the base, and when he wasn't there, a lot of guys would hit on me until they found out he was a cop. All I had to do was call Don's best friend, and he would deal with any annoying guy. Danny and his wife Belinda were two of the most wonderful people I knew at the time. I still miss them. I was very tired and went upstairs, climbing into bed with Don. I immediately fell asleep. Judy, I woke up to the darkness and the smell of cooking food. I was hungry. I got out of bed and went downstairs. Don was in the kitchen cooking. He was an excellent cook, and when I couldn't cook, he always prepared something delicious. I stopped in the doorway, watching him. He saw me, nodded, and pointed to the kitchen table. I saw 2 covered places. He carefully went and sat down in his usual place at the table. Don watched me. I was still without anything. He got dressed again, in shorts and a t-shirt. I had never liked walking around the house without clothes before, but now I felt a freedom I had never felt before. I didn't know what Don thought about it, but he didn't say anything about my outfit without clothesness. He was cooking something simple: scrambled eggs, fried potatoes with sausage, and biscuits. It smelled so delicious it made my mouth water. Don took my plate and put the food on it. When he placed it in front of me, I smiled. "Thank you, dear," I said. "Please," he said quietly. I swallowed my pride once more and simply nodded. It was like a knife to the heart. I sobbed as I looked at the food, no longer feeling hungry, but somewhere inside I felt an excitement I had never felt before. I shuddered from my thoughts and mechanically started eating. I couldn't taste what came into my mouth. When I finished, I sat watching Don. He ate without looking at me. When he finished, he pushed his plate away, stood up, and looked at me before walking away. "Clean up after yourself," he said. I almost choked on my orange juice. I felt another prick in my heart, but I also felt a strange excitement in my lower abdomen. I sat wondering what was happening to me. Tears flowed down my cheeks again. It looked like I was about to run out of tears. I sat there for a little while longer, not thinking about anything, then got up and started cleaning up after Don. He was a good cook but always left a mess when he cooked, although he usually cleaned up after himself. I assumed some things had to change because of what I did. I should be mad at him for what he calls me now, but I knew I had screwed up so badly that he should kick me out and never speak to me again. I hoped that his behavior now was his way of giving me a second, third, or fourth chance. How many times have I hurt him without knowing it? How many times has he hurt me without knowing it? I could count the number of times he hurt me on one hand. Once, he forgot my birthday and confused it with his ex-girlfriend's birthday. It took me a long time to forgive him for that, but I don't think he even noticed that I was angry. He corrected himself immediately, so it was nothing to him. As far as I know, he never cheated on me, which was surprising given the revealing outfits and arrogant, vulgar makeup of the time. Although if he cheated on me while I was away, I would not hold it against him. In fact, if he went out and had an intimate with someone today, I wouldn't hold it against him. Of course, I wasn't going to tell him about it, but if he figured it out on his own, I'd hope he'd have a good time. No, honestly, I would hope so. I just hoped I could stay with him even if he started cheating on me. If I could be with him at least sometimes, I would be delighted. When I finished cleaning, I went to look for him. He was in his office at the computer. The chair I had been sitting on was still in place, his briefcase was closed. He was doing some searching, and I didn't know what it was and didn't think I needed to know. I entered the office and sat down on the chair next to him. He looked at me, frowned for a second, then smiled. I tried to keep my face straight, no smile, no frown. I just looked at him, not at the computer screen. It was none of my business what he was looking for there. Additionally, out of the corner of my eye, I saw that he was reading some stories. After about half an hour, he turned off the computer, stood up, and took my hand, helping me stand up. He led me upstairs to the bedroom and pushed me onto the bed. The photographs were still there. I hadn't cleaned the bedroom because he was sleeping, and then I fell asleep. I stood for a long time, looking at myself in those photographs, and couldn't remember why I did what I did. I remembered having a night, but not why. I didn't understand why. The shower calmed me down. I dried myself off and went to look for him. He was in the office again. I just sat at my desk crying. I felt so sorry for him, but I knew he didn't want to hear my apology. I just stood there as quietly as I could. I don't think he noticed me. He stopped crying and picked up the phone. "Peggy, this is Don. I need to talk to someone." "Sure, in an hour." "Okay, see you then." "Where?" "Okay, I got it." See you." He hung up, and I wondered who Peggy was. I started to walk away from the office but stopped when I heard his voice. "Wear a nice summer dress." "Just sandals." "Okay," I said and went upstairs. "Looks like I'll get to see who Peggy is." I chose my most beautiful summer dress. It was dark yellow, like sunflowers. I got dressed in seconds. I went into the bathroom to brush my hair and put on some makeup. When Don saw me, "No makeup?" "Okay," I said, my heart aching again from his words. I went downstairs to wait for him. I stood in the center of the living room, waiting. He came down wearing nice trousers and a button-down shirt. The trousers were blue, and the shirt was light gray. He looked great. I would have been very happy to be with him if we went out in public. He took my hand and led me to the garage door, even opening the passenger door for me. I was very happy, but I tried not to show it. He got behind the wheel, started the car, opened the garage door, and drove out. It took us an hour to get to a small shopping center that I had never been to before. He parked next to a bar. When he turned off the engine, he took out a $20 bill and handed it to me. "Go to the bar, get yourself a drink, sit at the bar, and wait for me." What? What did he just say? "Don't say a word, just go," he ordered. My mind was racing as I opened the door and walked out. I looked back at him, and he simply waved his hand towards the bar. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream, but I just turned around and walked towards the entrance of the bar. When I opened the door, I heard our car drive away. I walked into the bar, praying that Don would come back for me. I prayed for him to return. As I sat down on a bar stool, there weren't many people in the bar at this time of day. "What can I pour you, miss?" asked the bartender. "Virgin Mary," I answered. He nodded and went to make it. I had worked in a bar not long ago. He brought me the drink. $3.50, he said. I threw a $20 bill on the bar. He took it and brought me the change. I sat, drinking the tomato juice, wondering how long I would have to stay here. "Don, I just dropped Judy off at the bar." "Why?" I did not know. I was meeting an old high school friend on the other side of the mall, and I didn't want Judy around while I was talking to her. Peggy stood at the entrance to the store she was talking about. I pulled up next to her, rolled down the passenger window, and looked at her. "Can you give me a lift, madam?" I said, smiling. "Madam? Did you call me madam?" she shouted, laughing. She walked to the car and got inside. I drove off and parked in the middle of the lot. I turned off the car and opened the window. It was a beautiful day. "So, what's the problem?" Peggy asked. I hung my head, trying to figure out where to start my story. Then she hugged me, and when I turned my head to look at her, she kissed me hard and with tongue. I kissed her back. I knew I shouldn't have done it, but I liked it very much. When we pulled away from each other, we both sighed. "Wow, that was very nice," I said. Peggy smiled and took my hand in hers. "I've always wanted to do this. There's something else I want to do with you, but that can wait." "What is the problem?" she asked again. "Judy," I said. "What did she do this time?" asked Peggy. This wasn't the first time I'd talked to her about my wife, and if Judy had known, I would have been in trouble. Peggy and I were just friends, not friends with benefits, although judging by what had just happened, she wanted some benefits. About 3 years ago, she left me. "What? And you didn't call me then?" I looked at her and started again. About 3 years ago, she left me. She didn't say why, she didn't say where she was going. She never called. I didn't see her until 18 months ago. She was on a drinking binge, pills, alcohol, who knows what else. I took her to the hospital, cleaned her up, and we were together again. I was happy, she was more than happy. She couldn't do enough for me. We had more intimate after she recovered than in my entire life. And then, last Friday, I received an anonymous package. It contained an SD card with photos on it. I pulled them out of the central glove compartment and showed them to Peggy. She was shocked by what she saw. "Oh God, Don, I'm so sorry, she said, choking up. Thank you. If you look at her eyes, she's so stoned she probably doesn't know her name. There was also a video on the SD card. In it, she thinks she speaks coherently, but it's complete nonsense. She was so stoned that she couldn't even speak. So, I think I can forgive her for what she did in the photos and videos, but I can't forgive her for leaving and putting herself in this situation without telling me why she left. You really love her with all your heart, don't you? Peggy asked, a question to which I had no answer. I don't know, I said. So you're saying you could just leave her? I don't know that either, I admitted. Dilemma, then. Yes, that's why I came to talk to you. Where is she now? She's at the bar on the other side of the mall. God, this is a diner. Let's go get her. I think I need to talk to her before I can help you. What, seriously? Are you kidding? I exhaled. No, I am not joking. Don't I have a degree not only in medicine but also in psychiatry? Do you have any? I think I'll have to trust your professional opinion. Oh, enough talk, Peggy said, laughing. Park closer. We'll both get in. Perhaps it would be helpful if we all had a drink together. She doesn't drink anymore, and me too. Well, I'm drinking. I parked as close as possible. We both got out of the car and headed towards the bar. I spotted Judy at the bar. She was talking to the bartender and shooing away guys who tried to approach her. She didn't see me. As Peggy walked past me, I grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the booth. Why don't we watch for a while? Spying on your wife is not a good idea, she said quietly, standing up and walking towards Judy. I stood up and hurried after her. The bartender appeared to be preparing another drink for Judy. I watched him closely as he made an extra strong Bloody Mary. I was amazed that Judy would order this. I approached her, with Peggy behind me. Oh, hi. Time to go, Judy said, completely soberly. How many of these did you drink? I asked. Only one Virgin Mary, she said. I just ordered another one. I nodded and looked at the bartender, who brought her a drink. The lady wanted a Virgin Mary, I said. And who are you? He asked. I am her husband. Are you trying to get her drunk? I asked loudly. He poured the drink down the sink before Judy where I could taste it. 3 bottles of beer, unopened, I told him, and 1 water without gas. I heard Peggy laugh. Judy looked back at me. Thanks for noticing that, honey. Who's your friend? Judy asked. Judy, this is Dr. Peggy Farr. Peggy, my wife, Judy Carlson. It's nice to finally meet you. Judy hesitated for a moment, then took Peggy's hand and held it for a moment. Nice to meet you. Who are you? She asked. Why don't we find a booth? I suggested. Of course, we can do that, honey, Judy said sweetly. She didn't say it with irritation, just curiosity. I grabbed 3 beers, and Judy grabbed the water and threw a $5 bill on the bar. The bartender wanted to say something to her, but she just looked at him, so he turned away and walked off. We all went to a booth and sat down. I slid next to Judy, seating Peggy across from us. Judy looked at me, and I grabbed her hand, holding it tightly. She smiled and did not withdraw her hand. Judy, I'm Don's therapist. He's been coming to me every now and then for the last 10 years or so. We went to school together. Yes, the same one we graduated from in the same year. We lost touch when I went to medical school. So you're a psychiatrist? Judy asked. Yes. So you're also an ordinary doctor? I am. Can you help us? Judy asked, almost in tears. I hope I can. Is there something you want to talk about now? Peggy asked. I forgot why I left my husband, and I wish you would stop calling me dirty, vile names, Judy sobbed, tears flowing from her eyes. Don, Peggy said sternly. I scratched my head with one hand, while Judy held the other. I've been an idiot the last couple of days. I was very, very angry at her and very hurt. I used some euphemisms that I probably shouldn't have used. I'm not going to apologize because that's what I really thought at the time. I'll probably use them in the future if I think it's appropriate, but I will say I won't use them as often if it doesn't work. Nonsense, Peggy told me. Stop calling your wife dirty names unless she asks you to. Yes, madam, I said. Peggy looked at me. Judy wiped her eyes with a napkin. Judy, I won't call you nasty names unless you ask or do something to provoke me. Fair enough, she said, squeezing my hand. I squeezed back, and she smiled. Don, I want to see her on Monday morning exactly at 8. I have an appointment at 9 o'clock, so we can discuss a lot. You will wait for her in the waiting room. Understood. Yes, Peggy said. Fine. Judy, I hope we can work things out in your favor. I will try to help in any way I can. I live not far from you, but I work on this side of town. I will be available anytime after 8 in the evening. Don knows my home and mobile numbers. Don, give them to her. I will. I have one more question, Judy said. Which one, dear? Peggy asked. Have you and he ever been together? Peggy smiled and shook her head. Almost, but my family moved, taking me away before we could do anything. Right after graduation, I really liked Don. If he had asked me out on a date, I would have happily agreed. But now I'm married, happily, just like him, I hope. Thank you for your honesty, Judy said, extending her hand to Peggy. Peggy took it and held it, as did Judy. Please, darling, Peggy smiled at her. She's worthy. Don, if you don't, I'll hit you between the legs so hard that you won't be able to walk for a week. Judy laughed. I like her. Oh my God, I said. Looks like I'll leave it for now. Okay, I need to go back to the office. See you Monday, Peggy said as she left the booth. Can I get a return trip? She asked, sitting back in the booth. I laughed as she sat down with a sad face. What? Judy asked. It's parked on the other side of the mall, I said. Oh, then we better go too, Judy said, starting to push me out of the booth. I shook my head. I just hoped that everything with Peggy would go smoothly, otherwise, I might break down. Judy and I had met Don's old friend, who was stunning, but she was his therapist. They didn't seem to be lovers. I was grateful to a certain degree, but on the other hand, I was disappointed that he didn't have someone on his side. I'd rather it was her, it would ease some of my anxiety. I really enjoyed the ride to her car. She was funny, knowledgeable, and could read people better than Don. Don was quiet on the way back, which upset me. He also looked sad. Do you want to talk? I asked. No, he answered. It seemed like he wanted to say something else but held back. I have a question, he said. Okay, ask, I told him. How many men tried to hit on you while you were sitting there alone? He asked. Why do you need to know that? Please, just answer the question, he scolded me. Fine. I didn't really count, but I think about 10, including the bartender. He looked at me, nodded, and turned back to the road. How many of them would you choose if you weren't married? He asked. I was shocked by his question, but it got me thinking for a minute. If I were waiting for someone like today, no one. What if I hadn't waited? Probably no one anyway, they were all too old for me. Oh, he said, surprised by what I said. We continued on our way home without saying another word. When we entered the house, he looked at me. I looked at him. Go take off your dress, he told me. I nodded and went upstairs. I noticed that the photographs had disappeared. I came back downstairs without anything. He was still wearing trousers and a shirt. It didn't bother me. I liked the way he looked dressed. I also liked the way he looked without clothes, but he looked just as good dressed. He was sitting in front of the computer again, staring at the blank screen. I sat down next to him. He looked at me and nodded. You are so beautiful. There's no need to hide it while you're at home. He turned his head to the blank screen so he couldn't see the tears of joy rolling down my cheeks. My heart felt much better after his compliment. My self-esteem had also improved. He thought I was beautiful. Do you want to talk? I asked him again. Yes, but not now. I can't stop thinking about the photos of you. They pass through my mind one after another. I feel angry and jealous and also feel betrayed and lost. But underneath it all, there are my feelings of love for you, and that's the only reason you're not on the street right now. Oh God, I'm sorry. I can't remember. I really hope Peggy can help me with this. I really hope so. I believe you, and I want to forgive you, but without knowing the reason, I simply cannot. I understand. I think there are still things I want to know about what happened to me, what they did to me, and made me do. Then I'll know who's asked to kick. No, you won't find out. You will never go near them again, never. Can you hear me? As long as you live here, never. I understand, I told her. I understand, dear, I answered him. I promise. I also called PJ to thank him for bringing you home. I asked him about the lady. She is dead. She was shot by another merchant. Can't be, I said. We sat looking at each other for several minutes. I was a little sad, not because of her, but because of her children. She had 3 who lived with her. I didn't tell Don about it. I had to trust that he would care about the children. I knew he didn't care about the lady, and now knowing what she did to me, I didn't care either. You hungry? He asked. Yes. And what do you suggest? Well, later. But now I was thinking about the place where they serve roast beef. Go get dressed. Put that sundress back on. I like that you are without underwear. Okay, I'll be right back. I was happy but tried not to show it. When I went upstairs to get dressed, if you could call it that, we had a pleasant dinner together. No insults or sarcastic remarks. Don kept his promise, and I was going to keep mine too. The drive to the restaurant was short. We decided to have dinner there. The beef sandwiches were excellent, as were the fries and sodas. Returning home, I went upstairs and undressed. Don came with me and also undressed. We both went back downstairs and sat in the living room. It was starting to get dark, but Don didn't turn on the lights, he turned on the TV. This was enough for us to see each other. I looked around, all the curtains and blinds were wide open. I didn't say anything while we were watching a show I knew nothing about. I sat next to him, holding his hand, and he allowed me to do this. It didn't take long before he leaned over and kissed me. It was the first time since Friday morning that our lips had touched. My breath caught when his tongue touched my lips. Then things got out of control, and he started treating me roughly. I hit him hard, and he jumped back from me. I jumped to my feet and ran to the bedroom, and he was right behind me. I beat him by a split second, closed the door, and locked it. I hoped the door would hold until he calmed down. He didn't even try to enter. I heard him slide down the door and hit the floor, crying. I picked up the phone and called Peggy. After I explained what happened, she said she would be right over. I told her the front door was open and that Don was without clothes so she wouldn't be shocked. I saw the way she looked at him. I knew she was still in love with him. At the bar, he had lipstick on his lips, so they either kissed or she kissed him. It took her 10 minutes to get there. Don was still crying in front of the door when I heard her voice from the other side. I opened the door. Don slowly fell back into the bedroom and lay on the floor at my feet. Peggy sat next to him, speaking to him in a soft, soothing voice. I sat down and held his head. What happened? Peggy asked softly. We had a little fun after dinner on the sofa. I told him that he was hurting me. The pain intensified. Then I hit him very hard. He jumped back, and I ran here and locked the door. He just collapsed in front of the door. Then I called you. Will he be okay? Peggy asked. I don't know, and I won't know until he comes to his senses and starts talking. Let's put him to bed. Peggy and I pulled and pulled until we got him into bed. Why don't you get dressed and come downstairs? We'll talk. I'm fine the way I am, if you don't mind. Why does this suit you? She asked. I promised Don that I would be without anything in the house if he didn't tell me to get dressed. I intend to keep my promises to him. Okay, let's get a drink or something, Peggy said, heading downstairs first. When I went downstairs, I showed Peggy where the alcohol and mixers were and grabbed a soda from the refrigerator. I sat down at the kitchen table and waited. Peggy mixed herself a bourbon and ice and sat down across from me. Tears streamed down my cheeks. Peggy just looked at me while I drank my soda and cried. Peggy reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. I just looked at her with sadness. She smiled and squeezed my hand. Judy, I'm afraid you'll have to choose your words carefully when he makes love or is intimate with you. Any little thing can throw him off balance. He was traumatized by what you did, what you might have been forced to do, and the fact that he doesn't know why it all happened. So, she said as I sobbed, will he ever get over it and be able to put what I did behind him so we can have a normal night life, let alone a somewhat normal life? To be honest, I don't know yet. I have an appointment with him on Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Tell him when he wakes up. Until then, I'll be happy to sit with you as long as necessary. If and when we have an intim again, should I not ask him for anything? Yes, I think I can do it. I really love him so much that my heart is ready to burst with joy. I understand. I really do. I feel the same way about my husband, who is sitting in the car waiting for me. Oh my God, I shouldn't keep you. It's okay. He understands. When we got married, he realized that my patience comes first and he comes second. No, I can't do this to you. Go, I'll be fine until Don wakes up. I'm here, he said from the kitchen doorway. He was still without clothes. Oh, I squealed, disappearing from view when I saw Peggy. We heard him run upstairs. We sat and waited for his return. Peggy drank the rest of her drink and smiled. So, this is the first time you've seen him without anything? I asked. She blushed. Yes. Did he live up to your expectations? She blushed again. Yes, her voice partially choked by passion. Don returned to the kitchen, looking at us with confusion. He went to the refrigerator, took out a beer, and sat down at the table. He took a long sip before saying anything. First of all, Judy, I'm sorry for hurting you and scaring you. Secondly, Peggy, sorry about the nudity. This will not happen again. It's a shame, Peggy said, pouting her lips. I laughed. Thank you, dear, for your apology. He took my hand and squeezed it gently. Have you calmed down yet? Peggy asked him. Yes. I realized what I had done when she slammed the door in my face. As soon as this happened, I just passed out. I never meant to hurt her, even because she left me. I just wanted to understand the motive for her leaving. Everything else was done to her under the influence of substances and the power of suggestion. Short and to the point. You're starting to sound like me, Peggy told him. Now tell the truth. Okay, I wanted to beat her to a pulp. I wanted to hit and kick her until she was on the verge of death, but this opportunity was taken away from me. Would I really do this to her? I doubt it, but these were the thoughts that kept me going until she came back. Now I just want to love her, but someone is taking that away by showing graphic photos and videos of what was done to her. Peggy clapped her hands. Don looked at her with hatred in his eyes. Yes, it was really good. You know that I know you would never directly harm this woman. That's why you called her all those dirty names, Peggy said, standing up. Well, I'm going to leave. Dale's waiting in the car, she told Don. Oh my God, you brought Dale with you, he said, as if he wanted to hide under a stone. Yes, I had drinks with you and then dinner, so he drove the car. Does that suit you? She asked. Certainly, certainly, he replied, lowering his head. Peggy patted him on the head. Be a good boy, or I'll hurt you, and I won't need Dale's help. Understood, she told him. Got it, Don replied. Goodbye, Judy. I'll see you tomorrow, Peggy said, turning and leaving the house. He hugged me, and I hugged him back. I pulled away, looking at him point blank. There was still lipstick on his upper lip. I tried to erase it. Sit still. You have lipstick on your upper lip. Who did you kiss? I asked, wiping off the lipstick. Not with anyone, with you, he said, thinking he had caught me. I didn't wear lipstick today. Remember, you told me not to wear makeup. Peggy was wearing lipstick, exactly the same shade as this one, I said, pointing. Damn, he croaked. Okay, she kissed me. I was as surprised as anyone, he said. She told me something else, but I just ignored it. It's been a long time since I called her. What else did she say? I asked softly. Well, when she kissed me, I answered her. I don't know why, but I wanted to. You wanted to kiss her since you met again? I asked. Yes. Sorry, that's not necessary. What else did she say? I asked again. She said she wanted something more from me, but this was not the time or place. Would you like to take advantage of this at some point? I asked. No, not at all, he gasped. I sat there looking at him, feeling how excited he was. I smiled. I loved him so much, but could I let him do what they clearly wanted? Would Dale allow his wife, even if I had not met him, to sleep with another man? Listen to me very carefully, Don, I began, looking into his eyes. When I was sure I had his attention, I continued, Don, if you ever get a chance with her, please do it. I say this from the bottom of my heart. I want you to do this if you think you can, without jeopardizing her marriage. I would hate it if you did this to her. Don's eyes widened in surprise. If what happened to you hadn't happened, would you have been as loving as you would have allowed me to do what you just said? I knew he was confused. Don, it has nothing to do with what happened to me. It has to do with lost love and finding that lost love. I've never experienced lost love. I hope I don't have to. Time will tell me, but you have a chance to experience the love you have lost, or at least intimate with a woman whose love you've lost. I want you to experience it before it drives you both crazy. He covered his face with his hands and started crying. I hugged him and didn't say a word, I just kissed the top of his head. He removed his hands from his face and hugged me, trying to keep his face away from me. I think he didn't want me to see him cry like a baby. Still crying, he raised his face and looked at me with tears in his eyes. Then he kissed me hard and continued to kiss me until he stopped crying. When he finally pulled away, he looked into my eyes. I want to thank you for what you said, but I'm not going to do anything that would make you think that we are equal in our actions, he shouted the last word. I slapped him and got up from his lap. You know you're paranoid, you know it. Do you want to know the real reason I want you to? I said. Peggy wants, I will tell you when I think about it. It turns me on, but now I will never let you forget this if you ever do. Never. You an idiot. I shouted the last word at him. My mother was married when I was born, he answered. But not when you were conceived. She told me everything. Your mother was a good, approachable woman, and you're just a nasty man. I turned and left. I quickly went upstairs and locked the bedroom door. He followed me, but not quickly. He knocked on the door. Go away. I shouted. Darling, I'm sorry, he said. Leave. I'm not in the mood to talk right now. Just leave me alone for today. You broke your promise. Think about it, idiot. I heard him leave. A little later, I heard his car pull out of the garage, and the garage door closed. I cried again. Half an hour later, I carefully opened the door and went downstairs. He was absent. I looked around and found his cell phone on his desk in the office. I couldn't even call him. I looked at the last number he dialed on his phone. It was Peggy's number. I called back. Peggy said, I'm already on my way. What's so urgent, Dawn? This is Judy. Dawn left. Were you planning to meet somewhere? No, I was on my way to talk to you. Why did he leave? She asked. I'll tell you when you arrive. Okay, honey, I'm already pulling into the driveway, she said. I hung up. I heard the car door close, then someone knocked on the front door. When I opened it, Peggy was standing there. I let her in. I cried. I did something very stupid, I told her. What exactly, dear? She asked, heading towards the sofa. She sat down, and I sat next to her. I saw your lipstick on his upper lip, I began. You didn't accuse him of treason? No, nothing like that. Oh God, how can I say this? He said you hinted that you wanted more than just a kiss. Oh yes, it's bad, but I always joked with him like that, she said. Is it true? He didn't tell me this. He thought you really meant it. Oh, okay, you caught me in a lie. I'm sorry, but I really want him. What exactly do you want to do with him? I asked, wanting her to be explicit. I want to make love to him. I want him to make love to me, then I want him to keep going until I'm exhausted. Is this what you wanted to hear, honey? That's it. What did you tell him? I told him I'd be okay with him ending things with you if he ever got the chance. Oh my God, she whispered. She looked at me for a minute, studying my face. You'd really be okay with that, wouldn't you? Yes. He thought I only said it so he would do it and I have something to hold over him. He called me a liar, I said, tears flowing down my cheeks again. Okay, Peggy said, looking around. Someone I promised to help just caught me in a lie. I never lied to my patients. Judy was my patient, and I lied to her. She caught me, stupid. I wanted to hit myself on the head, but I couldn't. I'd do it later when I was alone. Now, I had to help her and her husband, my friend, the man I desperately wanted as my lover, even though I was happily married. Will you ever forgive me? I asked. Of course, but it will take some time. I really like you. You are a person whom my husband loves and has known for a very long time. At some point, you two could be lovers and maybe even get married. That's very generous of you, Judy. I wonder if I could be so generous with someone. Would you cheat on your husband? She asked me. I think it's time to tell the truth, at least to you. Judy, I'll tell you something I've never told anyone, even Don. Please don't tell him. He thinks Dale is my husband. What? Dale is not my husband. He is my lover. My real husband, and I have an agreement. Oh God. You're a hot wife, Judy whispered. Where are you from? Don read about it on his computer. Oh God, he knows. Yes, I'm a hot wife. I cheat on my husband, even though I'm not actually cheating. Is it cheating if he knows about it? Is it cheating if I tell him all the dirty, juicy details? Is it cheating if he watches sometimes? Is it cheating if he participates? I don't know the answers to these questions, I said. Judy looked at me with admiration. Don't look at me like that, I told her. I can't help myself. Not only are you dazzlingly beautiful, but your husband shares you, and not just professionally, but the real you. He lets other men have you, and he likes it. If Don were to watch you, I would have a lot of fun watching it. Wow, Judy said. You're a liberated woman. A woman who shares her husband with others. I suspect that Don was ready to be, well, he already was a cuckold, just like my dear Sean. What is your husband's name? Judy asked. Sean. Don't tell Don, please. He will ask you. Maybe that's why he left. He really didn't want to know what you were like. It's not so bad, I told her. For some, it would be, she answered. Did he try to hurt you? No, I said. I quickly went upstairs and locked the bedroom door. He knocked quietly on the door, saying that he wanted to apologize. I didn't believe him, so he left. When I went down to the office, I found his phone. I called back the last number he had dialed. It was Peggy's number. It's clear, Peggy said as we both looked at the garage door. The door opened, and a car drove in. The sound of the door closing warned us that someone would come through the kitchen door. Don walked in and looked at us both shyly. Judy wanted to get up and go to him, but I grabbed her hand and stopped her. She looked at me. Let him come to you, I whispered in her ear. She nodded and sat back down. Don looked at me with something I thought I would never see him look at me with, hatred. I didn't need him to be like me, to be his therapist. He just needed to talk to me. The hatred disappeared. I took a deep breath. He came up to us. "Judy, I want to apologize to you for calling you such a terrible name." "What kind of name is this?" she asked him. "I'm really sorry. I promise to never call you that again. You already made that promise not more than 2 hours ago, and you broke it an hour after you made it. Why should I trust you now?" Oh, she was good. Now I really like her, I thought. Don actually dropped to his knees. "I pray that you find it in your heart to forgive me for breaking that promise. I really do." Don was good in his own right. "I'm a fool, aren't I?" "I think it's time for me to go," I said quietly. "Oh no, you don't," Judy said, grabbing my arm and holding me there. "Don, she is here. She agrees, and her husband wants it. Oh God, now he knows. Was he stupid? July had just explained it to him. She is here. Have a night with her. I want to watch you with your high school sweetheart, the one you lost but now found." He shook his head. This was happening. Don was about to have intim with his high school sweetheart, and I was so happy for him that my jealousy and hatred melted away. The only thing I felt was love and passion, love for him, and, strangely, passion for Peggy. I wanted to kiss her like Don did. I just sat and watched my husband kiss her. It was every man's dream, 2 women at the same time. What do you think of our first part of the story today? It seems to me that whoever sent the husband an envelope with a memory card with the moments of infidelity on it is doing a great job. What's your impression? Let me know in the comments. See you in the comments.